Day. Go ahead and grab a seat. I got to tell you, this has got the makings of my favorite message that I've ever preached in my entire life. And I mean it because I get to merge my two favorite things. For those of you that know me before this, I can't get this off. I broke something there. For those of you that know me before this, you know, music's been a big part of my life. I love music. I've been playing music professionally at some level since I was 16. Hey, good to see you, Liv. I'm glad you made it this morning. Since I was 16 years old, I've been playing music. A lot of times in the context of the church and worship, but beyond that, also playing in bands and playing, having a recording studio and that kind of stuff. So music is like, it's definitely a love of mine. And when God called me to lead a church and to really kind of like once and for all step out of that, it was hard for me. And then this week, like I got to marry the two things. I get to talk about music a little bit to explain God's word. And it's going to be exciting. I hope you learned something today. I hope you leave inspired and encouraged, maybe even challenged. But let me remind you before I go any further, if you're challenged, I just want to remind you about Romans chapter 8 that says, there is therefore now no condemnation because of what Christ did. So challenging us, how many of y'all know that being challenged by God's Spirit is drawing us towards something better? It might be uncomfortable, but he's trying to draw. Anybody ever been challenged by God only to be really thankful on the other side that he was faithful to love us enough to not keep us where we were? That's my story. But let me tell you where we are. That we're writing a letter. Well, Paul's writing a letter to us, and we called this series To the Church of Converge. We're basically drawing from the 9 letters that Paul wrote over to 7 different churches, and I probably missed 1 or 2, but Ephesus and Philippi and Galatia and Colossae and Thessalonica and Corinth and Rome. He wrote letters and teaching them how to be the church. Like they were church 1.0, New Testament church 1.0. And so Paul was writing them to encourage them, just like I said to you, to edify them, to build them up, to challenge them, to correct them. And so we're doing a series, a 9-week series, looking at what Paul wrote to the churches and seeing if we can pull out of those things a letter that Paul would write to us. Here's what we have so far. I'll read it to you, but you can follow along on the screen. Here's the letter that Paul's writing to our church, to the church of Converge. Week 1 was you be who God has called you to be. And then week 2 is sort of the follow-up to that. If you want to accomplish that, then the only way you do that is let God's Spirit guide you. In my effort to be the amplified version, I wrote these words, in every step to experience the fullness of that calling. And then last weekend we looked at, remember, people matter most. But this week we're going to look at the last sentence there. Maybe you can read along with me. So, live in harmony and stick together. There's the word harmony that is a musical term that I want to unpack to you today. The letter, the statement that Paul would make to you and I today is to live in harmony. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10, it'll be on the screen. There's Bibles in the back. There's a Bible in our Converge app. You can follow along, or you can just be lazy like I typically do and just read it from right there. But in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, I need you to know that Paul is writing because the church is divided. Like right from the rip, Paul is in essence saying to the church, I see you and everything you're doing is picking sides. Like in chapter 1, it was like they wanted to follow, this was the best preacher, so they'd follow that apostle. This was my favorite apostle, so they'd follow that guy. Well, this guy is a good communicator, so they'd follow this guy. And then some of the super hyper spiritual would be like, I don't follow anybody, I follow Jesus. And they're just quarreling and bickering about who's the best pastor among them. And that's what Paul's about to write about. But besides this, we looked last week, remember what the freedom conversation? Like, what should we eat? Can we eat this or can we eat this? Or how do we live out this relationship with Jesus? And they chose sides. In chapter 11 of 1 Corinthians, it's a socio-economic battle. Do these people belong here? And what's God designing for us as far as what we should and shouldn't have? They were a divided people, which as many times as we'll see today that Paul writes to a divided people, I mean, I think it should stir us on to be alert to the fact that we have a tendency, a propensity to be divided. And Paul is going to try to say to us today, this is not a if you're here and you're a guest, I am so glad you're here. I hope you feel like you belong. But this is a message for those that consider Converge their church home. How do we be the church that God's called us to be? Well, let's look at what Paul says to the church that has a temptation to be divided. In verse 10, it says this. By the way, I know you guys are here. So I just wanted to say thanks for being here. You broke a string?
I did, yeah.
That's rock and roll worship right there. I've never been more proud of you in my entire life. Verse 10 of chapter 1, I appeal to you, dear brothers and sisters, by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, to live in, will you say it? Maybe could you say it in three-part harmony? No, I'm just kidding. With each other. Let there be no divisions in the church, rather be of one mind. And then it says united in thought and purpose. I cross-referenced this across several different versions, and I like the way the Passion Translation says it. I'll also have this. The latter part of verse 10 says, be restored as one united body, living in perfect, there it is again, harmony. I love this sentence. I'm going to put a pin in it and come back to it. But form a consistent choreography among yourself. What a cool visual that is, that we as the community of God should be able to dance together, that we know the rhythms of grace and we extend those in a choreography. We'll come back to that. But then he ends with having a common perspective with shared values. Common perspective with shared values. So I did my own research. This wasn't in a commentary. I just wanted to write a message for us. Like what's God saying to us, our church? And I want to look at those two things as a way of introduction. As a way of an introduction, the two things there are shared values and common perspective. I'll look at shared values first. And what I think shared values is for our conversation today is this. It's our foundation. In a musical term, it'd be the key that we're playing in. And I want to illustrate this, and that's why I asked these guys to stay up here. So I know you don't know. These guys are so... Can we just first off tell Nick and Justin thank you for loving and serving our church so relentlessly. So I'm going to grab a guitar too, and we're going to have a guitar off. No, I'm just kidding. I would lose that battle. So I'm going to grab a guitar like this. Grabbing a guitar just had nothing to do with my message. I just wanted a guitar. But you sing it in...
It smells like Teen Spirit.
Yes, that's great. That's great. It smells. Yeah. Well, get me fired. Thanks. So you're in B flat.
Okay.
You're in A. Okay. We're just going to do the chorus. And then I'm going to do it in G because I only know those chords. So do you have a pick? I don't have a pick.
I do. Hold on.
May I have a pick, please? Wait, I got one here. I think I do. I'm a guitar player still.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said I'm a guitar player still. And God said, let me give you an illustration. Proverbs says, pride cometh before the fall. And then he, cut my guitar right there. So how about this? I need from Suzanne over. So you're not on Suzanne's team. So from Suzanne over, front to back, you're with Justin. Okay. The middle section from Evan. So just kind of guess to let's see. Let's do sonnet. So sonnet right there. This is my section. My team, best team. And then over here from sonnet over, you're with Nick. Okay, so don't sing unless it's your time. But let's go ahead and tune. Can we tune? Yeah, thanks. I heard that note. But it makes for an important conversation. We heard Nick strum that, and it was pretty out of tune. But it's an important. I'll just preach it for a second. That before we come together and sing, we need to individually be tuned up. A lot of times, there's church people that just feel like the church isn't for them. They don't seem to vibe with the church. I wonder if the conversation is, and are you in tune? Because we sound out of tune when we're individually out of tune between us and the main key. How are we going to possibly make beautiful music together when our lives are out of tune? So step one of being a church that is in tune together is going to be that we live individual lives that live in constant awareness that we need to tune. Like if you see me playing guitar, then you'll know I have a tuner on the ground, and in between, it's like a nervous tick for me. In between songs, as I'm talking, I'm tuning constantly, and I had this fear of doing this and it being way out of tune. I have this fear that I live in, and so I'm always tuning. And I think a good rule of thumb for us is that we would be scared to death of coming to church and striking a chord on our lives and it being out of tune. So we need to be in constant awareness that we have to be in tune. And then once we've tuned personally, then how about Team Justin in the key of A? You're with them, so go ahead and
you ready?
The chorus.
Holy, there is no one like you. There is none besides you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
Oh, okay, I'm just kidding. How about B flat?
Yeah, so we're the guys. I'm sorry, this is really high. So
Yeah, it's gonna be really high. You were up there. You were up there. Yeah. Okay, just the voice.
And show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me.
That sounded really, really good. So yeah, you can give yourselves a round of applause, and then we'll do it. I did the low one for me because of, well, you know, I got the chance to make these decisions, and I couldn't sing either of those keys. So say, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside. Come on, open up my eyes in wonder and show me. Individually, we're in 3 different keys, and we actually each sound good. We could step into this room and we could worship together because we have 3 different people, and when we do it by ourselves, it actually works. Now what I want us to do is all at once, you play it in A, you play it in B flat, and I'm going to play it in G. And so you're with Justin, and you're with me, and you're with Nick. So Nick, winners, Justin. Okay, so all at once. On the count of 3, let's just do it together and do it like believe in it a little bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Say. We've done enough. That could not have worked out better. I'm not even kidding you. Like in my head, I'm like, is this going to work? And the interesting thing is that we don't notice we're out of tune until we come together to try to do it. And what's crazy is that we live the kind of lives that we have our groups of people, and it just seems like we're good. We're vibing, like that our theology and our decisions make sense. And we wonder, what is it about when we come together, we feel this tension and this dissonance. And I wonder if sometimes that's just we chose to be in different keys. I believe what Paul says throughout every one of his letters, he is constantly trying to say, the key has to be Jesus. The foundation has to be Jesus. And when the foundation is Jesus, I know these guys are both incredible singers. We could pick a key and all be in one key and sing several different harmony parts that are very different, but what we did was play different things in different keys. When you're in the same key, you can actually play very different things, and it actually sounds beautiful because we're in harmony together, but we've chosen our key. We get out of tune really, really fast when we change keys from Jesus, because now we got to choose the key that's the most important to us. And we choose political keys, we choose moral keys, we choose standards, that our experiences, we choose all of those keys. And we converge. Paul would say to us, and I would say to us, we got to be a church that chooses to live our lives and to live our mission statement in the key of Jesus. If you believe that, say amen. Yeah, so then there's another thing that Paul says. It's a common perspective. I get to be done here. And actually, Justin, you're good. Yeah, can we thank Justin one more time? I'm so grateful for you, brother. And so then,
You still want me?
yeah, I do want you. Well, I want you both. I love you guys both equally. But you tend to be the underscorer. You know, the vibey. You got that. Do you have that reverb pedal? Yeah, this is. I believe. I'm convinced that the Holy Spirit resides in reverb. Then can I just you pull up a reverb and start underscoring whenever you're ready? Okay. So Paul says that we have to have shared values and a common perspective. I wrote common perspective to mean this. To working to understand where someone else is so you can engage with them in ways that deepen connection rather than to discourage, divide, or disrupt. I mean, really, truly, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I'm just talking about empathy. Right? That's like a broader, for me, it was a more introspective way to define empathy. But empathy, if you think of it through that lens, it's working to understand where someone else is. So you recognize that there's someone different than where you are, in a different place than where you are, possibly even feeling things very differently than where you are. And we work to engage them in ways that deepen connection rather than to discourage, disrupt, or divide. It means that we somehow step into where someone else is in a way that actually enhances where they're at. It actually builds on where they're at rather than try to get them to adjust all the building blocks and to see it differently. It's, you know, maybe you've seen the Brene Brown video on empathy versus sympathy, but in essence, it's like when someone says their marriage is on the rocks and you go, yeah, at least you have a spouse. Well, man, my job's up. I'm scared to death. Cuts are happening later this week. And you're like, yeah, you've made more money than me, though, for 5 years, so you're net good. You know, we try to adjust someone else's storyline, and it actually just dismantles it. But I wonder if the invitation isn't to step into it. I told Nick earlier today, I said, dude, you know, you always underscore. And I said, can you do me a favor? And can you just, I want to know, like, one of your favorite songs, like a high energy, upbeat favorite songs. And what I want you to do is you're going to be underscoring me, and at some random time, I want you to just start playing that song because it's your favorite song. And so imagine we're doing like the altar call. Oh, that was old school. I said the altar call. Wow, that brought my Baptist roots right back. So it's that moment where we're trying to do the closing, and Nick comes up, and I said, Nick, can you just play behind me? And in the middle of that closing, after preaching maybe 30, 40 minutes, all of a sudden Nick's supposed to come up and create an atmosphere that enhances what we're doing together. That's a bridge, and Nick decides to come up and, what song would you pick? That song I told you to choose, the high energy song. Well, okay, well, you're fired, but number two, we'll deal with that later. Didn't I say like a high energy, just random song?
No.
Yes, I did. Because you said, then do Teen Spirit. What song do you know? What, do you know any non-worship songs?
Switchfoot?
Sweet Home Alabama?
Is that the bam, bam, bang, 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 bang? I have a lot of reverb. Hold on.
Let's see your pick. So I'm doing the...
There we go. Hold on.
I don't know how to do it. I just blew. The point of the illustration that Nick bombed heinously was going to be Nick comes up here. You're dismissed. In fact, if you sell your guitars. Can we thank Nick? Seriously, let's thank Nick. The point of the illustration that was in my head that I did not communicate very well is Nick comes into this environment that I'm in and I'm building, and we don't recognize that Nick shows up when he shows up. He just kind of just creeps in from the back, and he turns on a delay pedal, and it sounds really ambient and really cool. But did you know that every time Nick comes up here, he makes a decision. Maybe it's not a conscious decision because maybe he couldn't imagine just coming up there and all of a sudden ripping out like a Van Halen song in the middle of like a response time, but he could do that. But he doesn't do that because he wants to step into circumstances and to create harmony with what's happening. I believe with every ounce of me that the reason Paul says harmony and not unity is because we're not the melodies. The melody is that thing that you sing. It's the chorus that everybody knows. His name is Jesus. We're not trying to sing the melodic hook and the chorus that we hope everybody sings with us. His name is Jesus, but we are invited to find a harmony part among that so that we can be together, doing different things, but we possess the ability. And you got to know this. And the reason, I know the illustration didn't work, but I know you get what I'm saying. Every time you engage someone who's in a different place than you, we have to be mindful that what we want to say, what our experiences are, where we've been, we don't need to vomit that all over them, but we can just step in to what's going on in their world and live in harmony. This harmony thing was really fun for me. I want to look at 3 things that I learned from this passage. You don't have to put the verse up. Let me read the verse. I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, to live in harmony with each other. The message starts that same verse, and it says like this, Paul saying, I have a serious concern to bring up with you. Using the authority of Jesus, our master, I'm going to put it as urgently as I can. And then Paul goes on to say, live in harmony. That's in the message. So this is a serious matter. The first of 3 things I want to say, try to do it very quickly, is that harmony is way better than unity. Harmony is way better than unity. And when I first thought through this thing, I was a little puzzled, like, what is it? And you know me, that's why I love this message so much. It's a music theme, and so here's a graphic of a MIDI track. So when I'm recording, this is like MIDI, and I don't know if you know what MIDI is, and it's basically those individual little little dashes are notes, and depending on what I send to those notes, it can be any instrument known to mankind. And I've just got individual notes on a staff, and what I'm trying to illustrate to you today is that harmony is better than unity. So let's find the bass line. Let's play what that sounds like, the bass line of that. Cool. Now, if unity is the goal, then that means that what we need to do is that now find additional people that will add on to that note. So unity says that here's what we do, and I need as many people as possible to do this with us. So if I add 11 tracks total, there's 10 more tracks, throw that MIDI graph up there of Logic. So now I had 1 track, I copied and pasted and duplicated it. Now I have 11 tracks. Do you have that? Nope, cool. Then there it is. So that now, unity, this is the goal, the benchmark is unity, and so unity is what we have to strive for, and now we've got 11 notes doing the same united thing, and it sounds like this. Okay, you can kill that because that hurts my heart. That's clipping the signal really bad, and it sounds like crap, but the point is that what happened, 2 things happened whenever unity was the goal. What happened? It got loud, and it got distorted. There's nothing musical about that whatsoever. What unity does is it makes us louder. How many of you guys know that we've seen people on the street corner that are saying things really loud, but it's not necessarily making a difference? We're not required to say things in unity. We're required to find a part in the notes, in the key of Jesus, and we figure out where we fit. So I wanted to do an exercise. I just drug one of those MIDI files, so now I've got one, and then I laid a piano part over top of it. Do you have that? So this is the one thing that you saw, what you heard the first time, and then I laid a piano part over top of that, and so that one note just keeps going, and this is what it sounds like. You'll hear it here to pop through. This, sing it. Altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. One more time. Sing, here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy. So go to that graph now that has that shows all those MIDI notes. So this is all of those MIDI notes, and I put in red the one that's the steady one, and this is the church. Some are steady. You just show up and you're faithful and you have a part that you play, and there's others that do all of the frilly stuff, and they're the ones that are always moving around and doing all kinds of things. You're like, oh, I wish I could do that. But if everybody did those things, there'd be no baseline. And this works because we decided that there's a single key that we're playing in, and being in the harmony of Jesus is better than all trying to do the same united thing. The verse said in the Passion Translation that we are a choreography, right? I thought of like different kinds of choreography, like every single new Christmas parade, my father-in-law's favorite part was the Rockettes, and so my wife loves to watch the Rockettes, and so we watch it every time. It's really nostalgic for her, and I got to thinking, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's unity and unison and synchronization at its best. But I did some research on the Rockettes, and since if unity is the goal, and there's no one more unified in choreography than the Rockettes, one time a year, you can decide you want to be a Rockette, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, they go to audition for the Rockettes, and about 80 people made it. And even if you made it last year, you got to re-audition and start from scratch again this year. But only of those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, the ones that were there were all between 5 feet 6.5 inches tall and 5 feet 10 inches tall. So there's a 3.5 inch margin before you can even audition. And my point is that if unity is the goal, we all of a sudden require the introduction of you're in or you're out. If you want to be here, this is what it looks like. And if you're like me, I'm working through the heartbreak of the church that wrote that for me. And maybe for you, that if you want to be here with us, here's what it looks like. You got a 3.5 inch window, and as long as you don't have a growth spurt or you don't, or whatever else, then you can belong here. But unity is not the goal. The choreography is movements of grace, and everyone, I hope, let me just say that this is a good time, would be a good time to say, we agree, Pastor, or amen, or that's what's up, that we are going to be a place where everybody can find a safe place to discover Jesus with us. Amen. That's what matters. That's what's up. Thank you. Thank you. Harmony is better than unity. I just wanted to tell you a couple of verses. I'm going to rattle through this. You say, Dustin, I appreciate the analogy and the illustration, but it's more than just an analogy and me enjoying a musical kind of exercise this weekend. Paul says in Romans 12:18, I'm just going to pound through these, do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Paul says in Philippians chapter 2, don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. In essence, don't worry about always having to have the melody line. Be willing to step in and be the harmony. And verse 21 of Ephesians 5, Paul says to the church in Ephesus, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And using our message, he says in Ephesians 5:21, submit to each other because it's not about you. We're playing in the key of Christ. In Ephesians chapter 4, he says somewhere else to the church in Ephesus, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Philippians, he says this to the church in Philippi, in chapter 2, verse 3, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of yourself as better than yourself. Don't be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves. That changed it a lot. Verse 4, don't look out for only your own interest, but take an interest in others too. Be willing to be the harmony part. Galatians, he says this to the church in Galatia in chapter 5, verse 13. It is absolutely clear that God has called you to a free life. Just make sure you don't use this freedom as an excuse to do whatever you want to do and to destroy your freedom. Rather, use your freedom to serve one another in love. That's how freedom grows. I love that. I'm going to continue reading. Freedom grows when we serve it. It's like growing anything. If you want the fruit to be bared on that tree that's in your backyard, you want that flower to look beautiful. You are, in essence, when you get a flower, when you get a tree and you want it to produce something, you become a slave to that tree so that you water it and you take care of it and you prune it. And if we want to bear freedom, we have to serve one another through the lens of the freedom that we've been given and reinvest it. Let it take root. Let it bear fruit. We know what the fruit of the Spirit is, and we get those things as a church when we serve the church the way we serve those plants so that they produce something. It says that's how freedom grows. For everything we know about God's word is summed up in a single sentence. A big statement there that Paul makes. Everything we know about God's word is summed up in a single sentence. A lot of words are in God's word. And he says, you want me to just to sum it all up for you? Let's say Paul's like, you don't have time for the whole message. Let me just give you the point of the Bible in a sentence. It's love others as you love yourself. It's a big statement, but we're called to serve and to play harmony parts in the melody of Christ. That's an act of true freedom. If you bite and ravage each other, watch out. In no time at all, you'll be annihilating each other. And he ends with, and where will your precious freedom be then? We serve each other, we serve freedom, and then we get to, freedom is produced in that as we serve it. We serve ourselves, we annihilate freedom, and the very thing we hope to accomplish and be beneficiaries of, we've destroyed. Finally, in Romans chapter 14, this is another place that Paul says in verse 19, so then let us aim for harmony in the church and try to build each other up. Harmony is better than unity because that means we're playing in the key of Jesus. And it's not our key. It's not the key of Converge. It's not the key of our events. It's not the key of what you want or what I want. We play in the key of Jesus. Amen? Secondly, and quickly, I move through it. They're not really cute points. They're just more me processing out loud. It's okay, and it's even normal that tension in minor keys can be scary. Let me explain this. We do this every time. Maybe you do it. I do it. I've joked about this before. Hey, how you doing? I'm good. I'm really great. But if you really saw how that you're doing, you're not doing great. We're not really comfortable when life is in minor keys. When life's in the key of Pharrell Williams singing Happy, we come skipping into church and we can't wait. Brother, how you doing? Oh, I'm good, brother. Good to see you. But there's other times that life is hard. And it's rough, and I would call that life in a minor key. In minor keys, we have to be the kind of place where minor keys can exist because they exist outside of the walls of the church. And so when people come, live lives that are just in minor keys, we have to be able to host those kinds of keys. We can't expect for people to flip a switch and for their life to be happy. When I say minor keys major keys use a chord structure where it really, truly evokes happiness. It resolves. There's a resolution in major keys. Minor keys, the entire song never really resolves. There's always this tension throughout the song. I remember Matt Redman is a prolific songwriter for the church. He wrote that song I played the piano for. No, that was Tim Hughes. Tim Hughes and Matt Redman wrote it together. But he wrote, Blessed Be Your Name. Blessed be your name. That bridge is, you give and take away, you give and take away. He wrote, you give and take away. Him and his wife had gone through a string of miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. And he goes to the church to try to find hymns that speak to where he was. And he couldn't find any. There's not many hymns that deal with, this just sucks. This is hard. I don't know. I don't have the answer. The song we like to sing is, it is well with my soul. But the only line in that song is when peace like a river, or if sorrows like sea billows roll. But beyond if sorrows like sea billows roll, it's when the trump shall resound and my sin, all the bliss of this glorious thought. There's not much space in the church for minor keys, and we've got to be comfortable with minor keys because minor keys are the appropriate soundtrack sometimes. You're like, well, what do you mean? Maybe you've heard of this song before. This is a popular theme song, instantly evokes tension. It's from a popular movie. Play that video clip. Okay. My blood pressure just went up. I'm not going to lie to you. More than I imagined that it would. So a minor key, just to give you some musical background, if you have a major chord, and I'll do it for you. I wasn't playing it too, but if you have a major chord, a minor key is when you take one note of the 6 strings back a half step. So here's an E major. An out of tune E major, no less. 6 strings right here. If I take the 3 note in the chord, I know that doesn't make sense. I take one of these things, go back 1/2 step. So 1 fret, I lift up 1 finger, and that major chord becomes this. It's like where blues is written, right? It's this tense deal. So 1/2 step, and 1/6 of the chord changes it from minor to major. So we tweak circumstances by trying to get people to see it differently, and it changes everything. And so I found a clip of the Jaws theme that went from minor to major. So imagine if you're watching the movie, it's a minor clip. There needs to be a minor key song in that climax of the film, but instead we don't like minor keys, so we decided to put a major key in there because we feel better about major keys. We don't want the tension, and so now the Jaws theme is this. Like I feel like frolicking in a field of flowers. I changed the title. It's more appropriate. It needs butterflies and it needs birds, babies, and cats. If we don't have a space for people to come in here when they're singing songs in minor keys, then what we're doing is asking them to change and shift the soundtrack of their life. And what happens is we change everything. Number one, we tell them that it's wrong to have that key going on and they should pray harder, or we quote them Bible verses. And when I read what Paul has to say, a lot of what Paul has to say is about you and I taking on a minor key. You might be in a major key environment, but if someone else is in a minor key, we don't ask them to shift to us. We adjust to where they are. Paul says it to the church in Colossae. I have these verses in chapter 3, verse 12. Since God chose you to be holy people that he loves, you must clothe yourself with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults. The reason I put this verse in here is because if you're anything like me, I've done this in the past. Maybe you've done this. You leave that verse up there, Karen. I've done this in the past. Maybe you've done this. Well, it's their own dang fault. I mean, we saw that coming. They've been living like blah, 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 blah. As if that now the heartbreak and the consequence of brokenness is just, man, that's on you. And Paul is saying to you and I, we actually create the space that wasn't there. We make the space because we're going to have a propensity to just not have time for that. And Paul says, you got to make time because people are going to blow it. And if you want to do life with them, you got to move some stuff around so that you can make space for even the things that's created by their own mistakes and their own faults. That's your bed. Well, then get in it with them. I'm not you made your bed, lay in it. No, I didn't mean that literally. That clip could go viral. You see a bed? Get in it with them. That's not at all what I meant, especially to my daughter, babe. Don't you dare. Sheesh. Galatians chapter 6 says, love empowers us to fulfill the law of the anointed one as we carry each other's troubles. I know it's simple, and I know you didn't miss it, but I'll say it for my own sake. As we carry each other's troubles, it's a conscious thing. We took it on. Like we said, can I help you with that? Converge, we got to be the kind of place that I see Bill and he's heavy. Don't go this way. Say, he might not be ready to talk about it, but we would posture ourselves as a church to live in harmony. Even if the song is a minor key, I would say, can I help you with that, Bill? And he might say, no, I'm good. But I'm going to create the space to know minor key, major key, best day of your life, worst day of your life. I can carry that with you. That's living in harmony together. Goes on to say, if you think you're somebody too important to stoop down to help another, and really you're not, you're living in deception. Romans chapter 12, verse 15, be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Man, Paul says it again, live in what? With each other. There's something important. Paul says multiple times throughout his letter the importance of living in harmony, making the kinds of decisions that resonate in the soundtrack of life, not create dissonance, not create what happened when we all tried to sing Build Your Life. No, the key is Jesus, and we find a note on the MIDI graph of life. We find a note that we sing that can step in stride with what's being played all around us. Ecclesiastes says it like this. Maybe you know it, but I figured I would read it to you just so that you know there is going to be seasons of difficulty. We need to write the kinds of songs so that people have an anthem to sing when life is hard. How many of you in this, raise your hand if you have never experienced anything heartbreaking in your life? Not a single one of us. In fact, if I was to ask, and I won't, how many of you guys are currently walking through something that is so heartbreaking? I would venture to say, because I've had meetings with some of you in the last week and some scheduled for next week, everything, probably every hand or majority of hands would go up. So then we've got to be okay to let life be a minor key sometimes and to write the kinds of songs, to create the kinds of services, to create the kinds of spaces for those things to be able to exist. Ecclesiastes says, for everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Can we do that? Can we be the space, that a church that can create those kinds of spaces, recognizing that we need to let life be in minor keys sometimes? And finally, and very, very briefly, Nick, if you guys want to pop back up, I'm going to sing Build Your Life as we leave. Justin, you mind popping up? You can do it in whatever key you want. Just make it the same key. Thirdly, what part are you playing? So my notes, all I have is verses. I don't have a lot in the way of notes. And you're like, oh, that's what we noticed. But all I have here is a trumpet illustration, but I forgot my trumpet. I was going to bring a trumpet with me. I'll tell you the illustration since I forgot it. And then on the way here, I meant to text my wife. I'd say, baby, can you bring my trumpet? But she would have no idea where it is because I don't know where it's at. So she'd have been searching frantically throughout the house. But what trumpet illustration is that from 5th grade to 9th grade, I played trumpet. I haven't played it since, and I actually really enjoyed playing trumpet. I was in marching band my freshman year, and I haven't really played it since. What I was going to do for my trumpet illustration was, I probably haven't blown that trumpet for since probably the last 15 plus years, with the exception of, I think there's been a couple times, that's my son. I think sometimes I've actually gone into his bedroom and just blown it at his face when trying to get him out of bed. But that's the only time I've made noise with the trumpet. And my trumpet illustration was going to be for the first time in 15 years to try to play a scale or a song, because it would have been wildly embarrassing. But the reason I was going to do the illustration wasn't just to embarrass myself. It's to be willing to embarrass myself, to say blowing the dust off of something you used to do but you're no good at it anymore can be kind of intimidating. So I would have made that noise and embarrassed myself, and then what my challenge would have been, what do you need to blow the dust off of in your life? What can you bring to the symphony of praise that is Converge, the song, the soundtrack of learning how to be a community of God that we're trying to be? And we need for everybody to be a note on that MIDI grab that finds a place. Some of you are going to be steady. You might play one note every 3 months. Some of you are just going to show up and say, what do you need? But we all got to blow the dust off of some things in our life so that we can step into it. Being the church is absolutely impossible if it's reserved for a handful of staff, especially in our environment as a church launch. We, as a church launch, don't have those same resources. We need you. We need you to be in. We need for your generosity to be a part of how that we create the ministries that we do. We desperately need for folks that have thought about maybe helping out in kids or running a camera or just showing up, tearing down gear after service. Or you're looking for a list, I can get you a list. But I'm going to say it. I think we all have to play some part, with the exception of the handful of people that have no idea what they think about church and faith or Jesus. Those folks can come as long as they want to, but the rest of us, how about if we add our families and ourselves to the MIDI notes that make a song that says, here I am to worship. I want to be a church that's in essence, I know that we're not trying to sing that song, but I want for us, like Converge is being offered up to God the Father, and if it was like God receives it like MIDI notes, which MIDI notes are awesome because they can be anything, they can be any instrument you want it to be. You just, whatever file you put on the front end, MIDI notes sound like that. So all that MIDI notes are is you play something and you can create whatever instrument you want to out of it, depending on what program that you're using. And so that's us. We're here, God. Here's my part. I'm playing in the key of Jesus, and I know what notes go in that key. I know what notes. If you were to say to me, Dustin, hey, we're going to play this song in G, I would be able to play with you if I've never heard the song before. I know what notes go in the key of G. I might not know your song, but I can play notes all around what you're playing. So it sounds like I know what you're playing because I know what notes go in the key of G. Well, we know what notes go in the key of Jesus. It's in His Word. Like, He laid it out for us. These are the notes that when you play these, it's a sweet sound to my ear. So I need a church that says, I just want I want to have some notes on the staff that is creating a song, and we're in the key of Jesus. I know what notes go in that key. And let me say this, I'll be the very first one to say we're going to have some blind moments in the song of worship as a church. Like my band in rehearsal used to do this thing, you play a bad note, you owe $1, but we couldn't afford that anymore because we always hit bad notes. We're going to hit bad notes. It's not about not hitting bad notes. It's about recognizing what the key is so that when we make the bad note, we don't keep making the same bad note. If my bass player hits the same bad note every chorus, I'm going to stop and say, yo, I think you learned the part wrong. But if he hits a bad note on the first chorus and he covers it up and he fixes it on the second chorus, I know that happens. My plea today, that we would be a church that would just make some music with us. Just get on the staff. Just start doing something. Start getting involved. And for those of you that are, in fact, I'm going to pause my plea with just, can we, every single person in this room, can we stand to our feet and honor with a hand clap of gratitude for the men and women that make this possible every week? Come on. Don't do it cute. You have no idea what goes. Maybe some of you do. And keep clapping, because for those of you that are showing up week after week after week, you got to know, not only do I see it, but it's a song. And there's a heaven. Keep clapping for me. Come on. There's a Jesus that is leaning over the banister of heaven, and He sees the notes you're playing, and He's receiving it as, here I am to worship, and you're singing that song, and it's making a difference. Making a difference. So I would ask us if we could be the kind of place where everybody would be playing a note. You don't know how to play a note? You don't know what the key of Jesus is? Well, that's my favorite thing on the universe to do. My favorite thing on the planet is when somebody says, I don't really know how to do this. You can just riff and do all the bad notes. Oh, that's okay. You don't know what you're doing. We'll figure it out together. Let's be the place. The key is Jesus. Everybody's playing something. And when folks join us for the first time, we don't charge for mistakes. Father, I pray that You teach us how to be that church. Teach us how to be the kind of church that is built on Jesus, the foundation, the key, that we would learn how to have this common perspective. And the challenge of common perspective is that it's the word perspective. Ours is different, but we choose to adopt where someone else is. And for those that might receive this message as if like we're saying that sin's no big deal. Well, sin is such a big deal that it cost my Savior his life. Sin is such a big deal that it cost heaven your one and only Son. Sin is such a big deal that You launched a plan since the foundation of the earth. When we blew it the first time, You started setting a plan in motion that is a redemptive plan. And so, yes, sin is a big deal, but Jesus is a bigger deal because He overcame it. He paid the price for it. The wrath that we deserve because of sin was poured out on Jesus, and He took it freely. And He was killed, and He was buried, and He rose again. And so now I want to be the kind of place that just tells people who you are and what you've done has been conquered and defeated because of Jesus. So come gather around. Let's make music together that tells Jesus how grateful we are for what He has done on our behalf. Teach us, God, teach us how to do that. As we sing this together, as the closing prayer, I pray You'd unite invite us to be a church that maybe it's today like a line in the sand that says, yeah, we're going to be that place. We'll be the place. We know the key is Jesus. Everybody's playing a part, and we don't charge for mistakes because Jesus already paid.